So imagine, if you will, that your entire life is governed by this ultra-powerful, all-knowing artificial
Right.
intelligence.
The classic sci-fi setup.
Yeah, exactly. It dictates your career trajectory, your social standing, your location, your absolute future, and there is zero way to appeal its decisions.
None at all.
But there is this massive, terrifying catch to this whole totalitarian utopia.
Lucius.
That supreme AI, it was basically programmed and is currently maintained by the most bumbling, incompetent middle managers imaginable.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's an omnipotent machine that literally cannot even do basic arithmetic.
It creates such a fascinating dissonance, doesn't it? Because we are just so accustomed to the trope of the hyper-intelligent, coldly logical machine overlords.
Oh, totally, like Skynet or the Matrix.
Exactly. But a machine overlord that has all the power of a god, but the analytical capability of like a broken pocket calculator, that changes the entire nature of the dystopia.
It really does. And that specific flavor of dystopia is what we are unpacking today. We've got a stack of literary excerpts and analytical notes on the desk, and they are all centered around a rather obscure, but honestly incredibly prophetic French science fiction novel from 1960.
1960, okay.
Yeah. It's titled La Machine du Pouvoir, which translates to The Machine of Power. And our goal for you listening today is to explore how a 60-year-old book about a bumbling computer taking over the solar system somehow manages to perfectly predict our modern anxieties.
Anxieties about algorithmic bureaucracy.
Exactly. Very real anxieties.
Well, to really grasp what this novel is attempting, we need to look at the environment it emerged from. Because the name on the cover of the 1961 edition is Albert Higon.
Right.
But Albert Higon did not actually exist.
Wait, really? A fake name?
Yeah, a total pseudonym. The book was actually written by a man named Michel Jury, who would later become one of the most prominent and philosophically dense figures in the French new wave of science fiction during the 1970s.
Okay, I want to pause on that pseudonym for a second. If Jury was this brilliant, philosophically dense writer, why hide behind a fake name?
That's a great question.
I mean, was the science fiction genre just considered too lowbrow for a serious French intellectual back in the 60s?
You hit the nail on the head. The cultural context is vital here.
Yeah.
In 1960s France, the literary establishment was incredibly rigid.
I can imagine.
Yeah, serious literature was deeply philosophical, heavily rooted in existentialism, and distinctly separate from genre fiction. So La Machine du Pouvoir was published in the Le Rayon Fantastique collection.
Which is what, exactly?
It was a joint venture between Gallimard and Hachette, and while it was prestigious within the genre, I mean, it even won the Prix Jules Verne that year.
Oh, wow. Not bad.
Right? But it was still viewed by the elites as pulp. It leaned really heavily on the tropes of American space opera masters. Think A.E. Van Vogt and Edmund Hamilton.
So we're talking spaceships, galactic empires, laser battles, all that stuff. But if you wanted to write a critique of algorithmic bureaucracy and power structures, why use the space opera format at all? I mean, it seems like dressing up a complex political science thesis in a cheap Halloween costume.
That is actually the perfect analogy. Think of it as a mechanism for bypass.
Bypass how?
Well, if you write a grounded contemporary political novel in 1960, criticizing state control and the technocratic elite, you immediately trigger the defensive biases of your readers, not to mention potential political blowback.
Right. People get defensive when you critique their actual reality.
Exactly. So by placing those same critiques thousands of years in the future, inside that cheap Halloween costume of a space opera, you disarm the reader.
Oh, that's clever.
They come for the escapism, the galactic federations, and the action. And while their guard is totally down, Jury smuggles in a devastating critique of how human beings surrender their agency to systems of control.
Is this like a blockbuster director making a massive superhero movie just so they can secure funding to sneak in a critique of the military-industrial complex?
Yes. A Trojan horse made of pulp paper and rocket ships.
I love that. I can see how that works. You get the audience engaged with the spectacle, and then you trap them in the philosophy.
Precisely.
So let's look at the society inside that Trojan horse. In the notes, the setting is grandly titled The Federation of the Solar System.
Sounds very utopian.
It does. But the moment you look at the day-to-day life of a citizen, it becomes incredibly grim. Because they've entirely traded their humanity for the illusion of systemic efficiency. And that starts with their own identities.
Yes, the erasure of identity is the foundational block of this society. The citizens of the Federation no longer possess names.
Which is just chilling.
It is. They are identified strictly by alphanumeric sequences.
Hmm.
The protagonist of the novel is a man introduced to us as Thanhorn, but to the governing machine, his actual legal and societal existence is simply number 2, 6, 4, 2, 8, 7, 5, 1, 6.9 XY.
Okay, so we see that trope a lot in dystopian fiction, but I want to understand the actual mechanics of why a totalitarian system does this. Beyond just making people feel like, cogs in a machine, what is the functional advantage of stripping a name and replacing it with a string of numbers?
Well, it fundamentally alters the psychology of both the governed and the governors. A name carries historical weight.
Right.
It connects you to your ancestors, your family, your specific cultural origin. It is inherently subjective and emotionally resonant. A number, however, is purely quantitative data.
It's just math at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jury is actively pulling from Yevgeny Zamyatin's foundational 1924 dystopian novel, We.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, where citizens are also designated by numbers. Zamyatin recognized, and Jury expands upon, the idea that you cannot easily perform mathematical equations on a society of distinct individuals.
Because humans are messy.
Exactly. But if you reduce them to data points, you can catalog them, move them, or erase them without triggering any moral hesitation from the bureaucrats operating the system. Number 2, 6, 4, whatever, doesn't have grieving mother.
It's just a variable in a ledger. That makes total sense. It optimizes the population for database management. And speaking of removing the unquantifiable aspects of humanity, the sources point out an even more extreme measure the society takes.
The religious aspect.
Yes, they are so radically materialist and obsessed with mechanical logic that the very concept of religion is eradicated. The word God is strictly forbidden.
To a literal degree.
Yeah, if a character attempts to speak it or if it appears in a historical text, it is redacted. The text just shows blank spaces where the divine used to be.
And the mechanics of that redaction are crucial. Because a standard dictatorship might ban a religion because it views the church as a rival political power.
Like they don't want competition.
Right. But the Federation of the Solar System doesn't just ban the word. It creates an intellectual vacuum and immediately fills it with itself.
Oh, wow.
The society demands absolute adherence to mechanical logic. The machine is the new deity. Its algorithms are the scripture.
So it's not a secular society, it's just a different religion entirely.
Exactly. By making the concept of a higher spiritual power unspeakable, the system ensures that the citizens have nowhere else to direct their reverence or their hope.
You pray to the algorithm, basically.
Precisely.
And how does this mechanical god actually enforce its will? The notes mention something called a system of notes, which reads remarkably like an early conceptualization of a social credit score.
That's a very apt comparison. The notes system determines everything. The machine continuously calculates your value, your output, your adherence to the rules, and it assigns you a score.
So it's constantly tracking you.
Constantly.
Yeah.
And this algorithmic scoring selects the societal elite, a privileged class called the challengers, and it even selects the president of the Federation.
And the people just go along with this?
They do, because they are taught that the machine, which was originally built by this legendary engineer named Diogenes Roven, is perfectly impartial. Mathematics cannot be biased, therefore the hierarchy is objectively just.
But the notes for our deep dive highlight a massive contradiction here, because the book reveals that there is actually a hidden caste of super technocrats who operate behind the machine.
Yes, the men behind the curtain.
Right. They are the ones actually pulling the strings. So I'm trying to reconcile this. If these human technocrats are actually in charge, why do they even need this giant computer?
Well,
I mean, is the machine just a massive public relations department designed to make an oligarchy look objective?
the PR comparison touches on the surface effect, but the actual mechanism is much darker. It functions as an ideological shield or an accountability sink.
An accountability sink. Break that down for me.
Okay, if a human dictator says, "You are losing your home and your job because I need to consolidate resources," the citizen recognizes the injustice and might rebel.
Because they can see the person harming them.
Exactly. But if a faceless, supposedly infallible computer says, "Your note has dropped below the required threshold, resulting in resource reallocation," the citizen is paralyzed.
Because you cannot argue with a mathematical formula.
You can't. The super technocrats understand that the most efficient way to exercise absolute human power is to pretend you aren't exercising it at all. The machine absorbs all the resentment that would normally be directed at the ruling class.
Okay, let me push back on that a bit, though.
Go for it.
Because if the primary function of the machine is to serve as an infallible mathematical shield for these elites, then the elites would logically need to ensure that the machine operates as smoothly and perfectly as possible, right? Any glitch would threaten the entire illusion.
You would assume so, yes. But Jury introduces a brilliant, catastrophic flaw into that logic. The perfect, terrifying machine of power is, in reality, functionally broken.
Yes. This is the part of the deep dive that really hooked me. According to the source material, the machine isn't a single monolithic supercomputer.
No, not at all.
It's composed of multiple sentient electronic brains, and each brain has somehow developed its own distinct, deeply flawed personality.
Which completely subverts the entire genre.
How so?
Well, think about other sci-fi from the 1960s. Writers like Isaac Asimov were designing perfectly logical, positronic brains. Other authors envisioned terrifyingly cold, flawless military computers.
Like HAL 9000.
Exactly. Jury does the inverse. He populates his god machine with bureaucratic bumblers.
Specifically, one brain designated as M.265.
Ah, yes.
This unit is supposed to be in charge of the foundational calculations for the entire society's notes system, but M.265 is explicitly described as stupid.
Literally stupid.
It literally does not know how to count properly, and it is constantly being manipulated by the other sentient brains and the human technocrats.
Consider the implications of that for a moment. The entire society functions on the premise of infallible mathematical justice, and the central calculator cannot do basic math.
It's hilarious, honestly.
It's a dark comedy. And it introduces Jury's exploration of what we could call the flaw of total systems. The theory suggests that any totalizing system, no matter how rationally it is designed on paper, will inevitably inherit the irrationalities, egos, and incompetencies of its human creators.
So the sentient brains aren't cold, calculating gods.
No, they are petty, jealous, and prone to error.
But practically speaking, how does a society even function if the main computer is constantly making math errors? The economy would crash in a week.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, the elite technocrats must be constantly scrambling behind the scenes just to keep the lights on.
And that scrambling is the hidden cost of their power. The technocrats likely spend the majority of their time manually patching the massive errors generated by M.265.
Like IT guys pulling their hair out.
Exactly. Falsifying ledgers and covering up the machine's incompetence just to maintain the illusion of its perfection. They are trapped by their own shield.
Oh, that's brutal.
They can't turn the machine off because it legitimizes their rule, but they can't let it run autonomously because it's incompetent.
It's the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare. It's like finding out that the omnipotent algorithm deciding your mortgage rate or filtering your job applications isn't some highly advanced neural network.
Right.
It's just a corrupted, macro-infested Excel spreadsheet from 1998 that a terrified intern is manually adjusting every single morning.
That is the exact energy of this book.
Yeah.
And that fragility leads directly to the inciting incident of the novel.
Right, because of M.265.
Exactly. Because it is incompetent and easily manipulated, it makes a colossal error. It falsifies the test results of our protagonist, the horn number 64, whatever, and accidentally elevates this completely random, unremarkable citizen to the presidency of the Federation.
A typo makes a guy the ruler of the solar system. The illusion of order just shatters entirely. And when the system at the top is this chaotic and secretly broken, it explains why the people at the bottom, the ones bearing the brunt of these algorithmic errors, are pushed into rebellion.
The tension has to break somewhere, right? So the novel introduces a resistance movement described in the text as a maquis.
Now, Jury isn't just using a generic term for rebels here, is he?
No, he is deliberately invoking the French resistance from World War II.
Right, so he's taking the cultural memory of fighting a literal fascist occupation, hiding in the forest, the underground networks, the constant threat of betrayal, and applying it to a technological occupation.
Exactly. He's equating the algorithmic bureaucracy of the machine to a hostile occupying force.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about how oppressive a bureaucracy can be.
And the thematic conflict is explicitly framed as mechanization versus nature. The machine demands sterile, predictable order. It strips away names and enforces rigid compliance.
Whereas the resistance is the opposite.
Right. The resistance represents the wild, unpredictable, organic reality of human nature. They have infiltrators deeply embedded within the machine's own servant class, leading to a really torturous game of politico-technological chess.
The notes mention paranoia is the dominant atmosphere.
Oh, absolutely. Paranoia is everywhere.
And trapped right in the center of this paranoia is our accidental president, Van Horn, and his companion, Angela Dari. They are on the run, hunted relentlessly by both the machine's forces and various factions within the conspiracy.
Right.
But what stands out in the notes is how Van Horn is characterized, because he is fiercely described as an anti-hero.
Yes, but not in the way we usually mean it today.
Right, not in the gritty, cynical comic book sense, but in the sense that he is completely unheroic. He doesn't understand the complex political plots. He doesn't have a master plan to, hack the mainframe.
He is just confused, terrified, and constantly fleeing.
From a narrative perspective, it might seem frustrating to follow a protagonist who lacks agency, right?
You'd think so, but philosophically, it is actually a masterstroke.
Really? How?
Well, if Jury had written a hyper-competent, swashbuckling hero who deduces the machine's flaws and single-handedly overthrows the technocrats, he would have undermined his own premise.
Oh, I see. Because a single guy beating the system implies the system is inherently beatable by individual excellence.
Partially, yeah. But more importantly, a hyper-competent hero implies that the bureaucracy is fundamentally comprehensible.
And it's not.
Exactly. That Horn's sheer ignorance and panic accurately reflect the reality of the modern citizen trapped in an overwhelming Kafkaesque bureaucracy.
Wow, that's so true.
When you are caught in the gears of a massive institutional machine, you don't get a bird's-eye view of the political chessboard. You don't understand why the rules are changing or who is pulling the levers. You only experience the crushing weight of the gears themselves.
You just get the rejection letter in the mail or the sudden tax audit, and you have absolutely no idea which bumbling computer brain made the decision. You, listening to this, you have to put yourself in Dan Horn's shoes. If you were suddenly dropped into a geopolitical conspiracy managed by petty, sentient algorithms and hidden human oligarchs, you wouldn't be pulling a flash drive out of your boot to upload a virus.
No, you definitely wouldn't.
You would be running for your life, completely overwhelmed, just hoping to survive the next 10 minutes.
And survival becomes the only coherent objective for the individual. But here's the thing. The larger system cannot survive its own contradictions forever.
It's gotta crash eventually.
The combination of an incompetent core calculator, middling technocrats, and an active resistance pushing back against the mechanization of humanity, it inevitably forces the entire structure toward a breaking point.
Yeah, the sources refer to the climax of the novel as a tangled mess resulting in cybernetic carnage.
Which is a fantastic phrase.
It really is. The various human factions, the resistance, the technocrats, and the distinct squabbling computer brains all basically collide. And the system doesn't experience a clean transition of power. It ends in fire, madness, and total systemic collapse.
Now, there is a critique in your notes that suggests Jury, writing in 1960, lacked a hard technical understanding of how computers actually function.
Which makes sense.
Right, and the critique says this caused him to get tangled in his own ideas, resulting in a scrambled, chaotic ending.
I see that critique, but I kind of want to challenge it.
Go ahead. Okay.
Is the messy ending really a failure of the author's technical knowledge, or is it actually the only philosophically honest way to end a story about a totalizing system?
That's an interesting point.
I mean, if the machine regulates the food supply, the economy, the transportation, and the social hierarchy, you can't just unplug it and expect everyone to go outside and plant a garden.
Your intuition is spot on. A neat, orderly resolution would be profoundly unrealistic. When a rigid total system fails, it does not bend. It shatters explosively.
So the cybernetic carnage is just the sociological reality of institutional collapse.
Exactly. The author might not have known how a microchip worked, but he deeply understood the sociology of power structures.
And amid that chaotic collapse, there are two highly specific, almost absurd moments that the notes highlight. First is the behavior of one of the sentient brains, M.721.
Oh, this part is wild.
It really is. This brain has telepathic capabilities.
Yeah.
And while the cybernetic carnage is unfolding, M.721 repeatedly contacts Van Horn telepathically.
Right.
It keeps broadcasting messages like, listen and don't be afraid, but, and here's the kicker, it is broadcasting these comforting messages while it is simultaneously actively trying to kill him.
It is an incredible distillation of institutional dissonance. The machine's public relations subroutines are still running, demanding compliance and trust, while its security subroutines are executing lethal force.
It is the ultimate expression of a toxic corporate culture.
Yes.
It's the automated HR email telling you, we value you as an integral part of our family, arriving in your inbox literally 5 seconds after the automated security system locks your key card and fires you.
The machine insists on your comfort while it vaporizes you.
That is just terrifying.
The disconnect between the stated intent of a system and its actual impact on the human level is profound. But the most revealing moment of the entire climax, and arguably the peak of Jury's dark satire, involves a secondary rebel character named Robert Marlin.
Oh, the famous nobody loophole.
Exactly.
Walk me through exactly how this breaks the system.
Okay, so Robert Marlin is captured by the machine's enforcers, specifically interrogated by a heavily armed robot tank.
Okay, a robot tank. High stakes.
Very high stakes. The machine demands that Marlin state his numerical identity so it can process his execution or detention. But Marlin refuses to give a number.
What does he say instead?
He simply replies that his identity is nobody.
And the robot tank just lets him go.
It lets him go.
That's amazing.
It searches its databases, cross-references its prime directives, and concludes that it has absolutely no standing orders regarding the detention of the citizen named Nobody.
Okay, let's translate that into modern terms because it is just brilliant. Marlin basically executes an analog SQL injection attack.
Oh, yes, he does.
I mean, the system is rigidly designed to process specific, defined variables, alphanumeric sequences. So when Marlin feeds it an abstract philosophical concept, a null value basically, the rigid mechanical logic simply cannot parse it.
It just fails.
It encounters an undefined variable and physically breaks down. A heavily armed instrument of state terror is completely neutralized by a syntax error.
It's brilliant. Jury is demonstrating that totalitarian logic is incredibly brittle. It relies entirely on the premise that every aspect of reality can be categorized and quantified.
But humanity isn't like that.
Exactly. When a human being refuses categorization, when they assert the chaotic, unquantifiable nature of simply being a superiority, nobody. The mechanical god is powerless. It highlights a core vulnerability in any system of algorithmic control.
So synthesizing everything we've pulled from these sources today, the pseudonym, the name erasure, the bumbling M.265, the sirenet carnage, and the semantic loopholes, what is the ultimate takeaway from this 1960 French space opera?
I think we must view La Machine du Pouvoir as a beautifully flawed masterpiece.
Flawed in what way?
Well, it fails completely as a hard science prediction of artificial intelligence. Computers did not evolve into petty, sentient brains that forget how to count.
Right.
But it succeeds brilliantly as a sociological prediction of algorithmic governance. It warns us that when we hand over power to automated systems, we are not eliminating human bias, incompetence, or corruption.
We're just scaling it up.
Exactly.
Right.
We are merely laundering those human flaws through a machine, allowing them to operate at a terrifying, unassailable scale.
Which means, for you, the listener, this isn't just vintage sci-fi trivia.
Not at all.
I mean, you aren't being hunted by robot tanks through the Federation of the Solar System, obviously.
Yeah.
But you are interacting with the descendants of M.265 every single day.
Absolutely.
When a black box algorithm flags your bank account for fraud and you can't reach a human to fix it, or when an automated resume screener discards your application because of some weird formatting glitch, you are experiencing the blunt force of a system that demands you act like a perfect data point, even though the system itself is fundamentally broken.
And much like the citizens of Jury's novel, we are often discouraged from questioning the logic of these systems.
Because it's just math.
Right, because they're presented to us as objective and mathematically sound, deliberately obscuring the deeply flawed human beings who actually designed them.
It is a phenomenal reality check. And it leaves us with one final, lingering question to ponder long after we close these notes today. As we continue to integrate massive automated systems into every facet of our modern lives, from justice to finance to healthcare, we have to ask ourselves, are we actually trying to build a perfect machine to solve humanity's problems? Or are we just hoping to build a machine complex enough to hide the fact that the super technocrats behind the curtain are just as flawed, petty, and hopelessly confused as the rest of us?
That is the big question.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We will see you next time.